weird noise? Hello everyone, we are jumping right in today. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate it, and in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we will be tackling ourselves a turkey. Not just any turkey though, a turkey dragon. Before we get into the bulk of the voiceover though, I just wanted to throw a quick apology for the sketch footage being so overwhelmingly blue. I filmed this early in the morning and forgot to turn on my ring lights, but fear not, once we get into coloring this bad boy, the ring lights will be on and we'll be having a much better time. So, this was just a random idea I had the other day and I thought, why not? I like dragons, I like turkeys, let's combine them for Thanksgiving. I had been planning on doing my digital character design process for this week's video, but it was taking way too long, and if I had gone that route, this video would have been even more late than it already is, which apologies for that as well. You know how it is around the holidays, jumping right from work into family get-togethers, so yeah, sorry about that. Next week will most likely be the digital character design video, if I can get my butt in gear to finish it. Otherwise, it'll be a surprise for both of us. So yeah, I had planned to do the coloring for this piece in marker, and I was initially going to sketch this straight onto my marker paper, but I did some testing beforehand to see how my markers would work with the pencils I had, and boy, it did not like any of them. I really don't care for how my art looks when I line it with pen. I feel like my lines lose a lot of their energy, so I decided to go ahead and sketch this onto cardstock first. Once the sketch was done, I scanned it in and printed it out onto my marker paper, and not gonna lie, even though it's extra steps to do it that way, it kind of relieves stress because at least that way I know if I royally mess up and I really hate how the piece is turning out, I've got my lines saved and I can just print them out and try again. Kind of an artistic insurance policy, which makes making videos like this a lot less nerve-wracking. So as far as the design for this kiddo, it was pretty straightforward. Birds and dragons are pretty simple to mix since they already have very similar features. As per usual with my dragons, I did not add wings simply because I hate drawing wings, so yeah, none of that in my house. Also, after looking at some references of turkeys, I realized that turkeys are actually really colorful, and they have a lot of color shifts and patterning going on, so keeping this in mind, I wanted to make sure I kept this dragon fairly simple anatomy-wise because things were going to get real once I started coloring it. here we are with colors and improved lighting. Before I jumped into this coloring process, I went ahead and pulled out a handful of markers I thought I'd use for this. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the choices I made. I think they turned out quite turkeyish, although I do wish I had some more darker greens and more saturated oranges, but I think it turned out pretty nice for what I had on hand. If you're new here, or in case you just forgot from previous videos, I am using my go-to marker paper, which is the Render brand. I forgot to flip this over for y'all at the end, but it did not bleed onto the other side, even in the areas where I did several layers of marker. Like I said before, turkeys are super colorful birds, and I felt like trying to tackle this all at once was going to be way too overwhelming, so I decided to focus on one section at a time, starting with the skin. I was a little skeptical for how the neck in particular was going to turn out, since they have a lot of mottled coloration in there, so I kind of tried to mimic that spotty look by doing almost a stippling motion with the marker instead of just straight strokes. And I'm sorry if you heard my phone go off just now, I forgot to put it on silent. But I liked the look of this so much that I ended up using this technique throughout the majority of the piece. It gave everything a more natural vibe, and it helped give the appearance of feathers without actually having to go through and define each individual feather. This piece took me about 2.5 to 3 hours as is. That was just the coloring process, so I was really grateful I didn't have to spend a bunch of time on the feathers, or I would have been there all dang day. As you might already be aware, I like to keep my art loose and organic, and I found that using this method helped achieve more of that, and it was also just really fun to do. It felt like using paint more than markers, but without all the setup and cleanup, which is really nice. That was actually part of the reason I wanted to use markers for this in the first place. I was really tempted to do this in watercolor when I first had the idea because of those shimmery paints I have, which would have been stellar for the feathers, but then I thought about the setup process and the clutter in my desk, and I just wasn't really feeling it, so markers it was. I'm finding that the more practice I get in with markers, the more I enjoy using them. They are so convenient and versatile, and playing with layering is super fun as well. You can get so much variety and so many different colors just by having a few basic colors on hand. Or you can be like me and just hoard the crap out of them and still feel like you don't have enough of them, but we're not going to go into my vices in this video. But yeah, I had also had it in my head that I was going to use colored pencils at the end, but the more I worked on this, the more I wanted to see how far I could push it using mostly markers without, going so far that I overworked it and ruined it. So yeah, this was definitely an experiment in how far I can render something in marker at my current skill level. This is about the time I got all of the smaller pieces of the body finished, and I was about to jump into the most intimidating parts, which were the body and the tail. I really wasn't sure how to tackle the body. Part of me was tempted to do it in gray, and part of me wanted to continue the greens and browns and such that I had used on the neck, so sort of a stay of execution, at least that's how it felt at the time. I opted to go with the tail first. Now, admittedly, the tail is the part I feel I was most shaky on. This is where the most patterning and color changes are on turkeys, and I felt like it had gotten really busy by the time I was done with it, but you know what? That's just how turkeys be. Also, I was feeling the inclination to define the feathers some more on the tail when this was all said and done, but since the tail is supposed to be farther back, I thought adding too much detail to the edges of the feathers was going to make the tail seem closer to the viewer than I wanted. So I ended up leaving the edges a little fuzzy in the end and just let the colors do the talking rather than defining them with more lines. I wish I had been able to push the tail back into the foreground even more, but I wasn't really sure how to do that without pulling out paint, and I was trying to avoid that. I'm actually really glad I opted to do the main fan part of the tail first, because that helped me decide how I was going to approach the rest of the coloring. I felt like if I made the whole rest of the dragon as colorful as the tail, things were going to get a little weird from a viewing standpoint, but I also wanted to go ahead and continue the color shifting look on the body, so I compromised on this by doing the section of the tail between the body and the fan in gray just to break up the crazy coloration and patterning, tone it down, make it not so loud, and I think that was the right decision in the end. For the body, I carried on with the stippling type method, but I didn't go as detailed as I did on the neck because I wanted to give the appearance that the feathers on the body are bigger and not so tightly packed as the ones on the neck. Once I was done with the marker coloring, most of it anyways, I thought it needed a little more definition in the shading, so I went in with my dark blue Col-Erase since it was the closest colored pencil I had, and amped up those shadows a little bit. I also used my Posca and Sakura pens for highlights, which really did a lot for the dimension of the piece. And that's it for this one. This was a really fun piece to create, and it was a great test for me to see what I could do with markers. Definitely some room for improvement, but I'm happy with how this turned out for what I know how to do currently. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. As always, I would super appreciate it if y'all would leave a like or a comment if you enjoyed the video to help out the channel, and if you'd like to see future videos, don't forget to subscribe. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all in the next one.